Okay, hello YouTube. Today we're going to be continuing our exploration of e4, e5, and we're going to be continuing our exploration of the four knights defense, and we're going to be focusing on the main line of the four knights defense. We're going to be focusing on the move bishop to b5. Now, before we go any further, if you like this kind of content and you want to see more of it, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and please click on your notification icon. So anyways, there are basically two main moves here in my mind for black. There's actually more than that. I mean, you can play bishop to b4. You could play the symmetrical variation. This is certainly possible. But the two main moves that I would recommend is the Rubinstein variation, which is knight d4, which has been known to equalize in this position for a very long time. And then, of course, the other move here is the move bishop c5. Now, this video, I'm going to be exclusively focusing on the move bishop to c5. Now, this is a move that goes way, 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 way back. It goes all the way back to 1857. It was played by Paul Morphy in a very famous game against Louis Paulson. So I'm going to show that game right away. This is Louis Paulson versus Paul Morphy. It was played back in 1857. So this goes way back really far, and that game continued castles, and then Paulson plays for the fork trick. He wants black to play knight takes e5 when he's going to counter in the middle with pawn to d4. Morphy says, no, we're not going to do that, we're going to play rook e8, and that kind of made Paulson play the move knight takes c6 and d takes c6, and if you look at this position, you'll actually recognize it as an identical position that you can achieve from a very, very popular opening today known as the Stafford Gambit. But this is actually kind of a Stafford Gambit where everything has gone right. White has castled too soon, White has given up control of this d4 square, and actually in this case White has given black an extra tempo as if he needed it. But all of black's pieces are on the normal places that you would see them in a Stafford, and where black is going to make everything work. Now, Paulson played a really bad move here. Paulson played bishop to c4, and Morphy had a huge opportunity here. He missed the move knight to g4, and I'm going to go over that in a minute. But first I want to show this game, because this game was absolutely brilliant. Morphy continued with the move b5, and then bishop e2 got played. Morphy got his pawn back, and then Paulson made a couple of strange errors here. First off, Paulson played the move c3, I guess trying to play d4, but missing Morphy's reply. Morphy's reply basically stopped all of White's development forever. Morphy played queen to d3, which stopped White from developing his pieces. At this point, White just decided to expand on the queen side with b4 and a4. Morphy took, which still made it nearly impossible for White to develop his queen side. Queen takes a4 got played. Morphy just developed, just nice and cleanly. And then we have another strange move from White. It seems like White was trying to play rook a2 and follow it up with queen to c2. But White probably just needed to play queen a6 right away here and just exchange queens that way. The move that White played here is really strange. This rook a2, I guess just trying to play queen c2. But after rook on a to e8, he probably realized that queen c2 was going to be a no-go. Because now if queen c2, we have queen takes f1, king takes f1, rook to e1 is mate. So he had to play queen a6 now just to prevent that mate threat. And unfortunately that walked face first into one of the coolest queen sacrifices ever. So if you can see this, go ahead and pause the video and see if you can find it. So the move that shook the world was queen takes f3, sacrificing the queen. And then after gf3, rook g6, king h1, we have bishop h3, which is basically just threatening all kinds of mates, just threatening, the main threat right here is just bishop g2 followed by bishop f3 mate, so that rook has to move. Rook went to d1, just giving it as much space as possible, trying to get out of mate. Morphy did a little bit of windmilling here, bringing his bishop back and forth, grabbing that f-pawn along the way, and then playing bishop takes f2 to simply threaten bishop to g2 mate. Paulson's only way to defend against this mate threat was to bring his queen back. He needs something to defend the g2 square. So he had to play queen f1 and give back his queen. And then Morphy is completely winning here, not just because of the pawns that he's up, but also just because his position is extremely, extremely active. So rook e2, which creates this temporary pin, so Paulson breaks the pin, and then by the time Paulson is finally ready to develop his pieces, he has to resign because Morphy is threatening simply rook h2 followed by rook g2 mate. So bishop e3, we would have rook h2, king g1, rook g2 mate. So this was just an absolutely brilliant game, but in terms of our repertoire, it's not perfect. So if we go back to this bishop to b5, bishop c5, and then castles, castles, knight takes e5, rook e8, this is all well and good, knight takes c6, dc6, bishop c4, we have a huge improvement here for Paul Morphy, because of course we can't expect our opponents to make all the mistakes that Paulson played later. I certainly don't personally expect anybody to play c3 with the expectation of d4 and allow me to completely stop all of their development. But here, if you're familiar with the Stafford Gambit, you should be familiar with this idea. So stop and pause the video and see if you can find the move. I did give it away earlier in the video. So the move is knight to g4, and this is actually going to be a pretty irresistible attack. The point is that we are threatening f2, but we're also threatening to bring our queen into the h4 square. And it's also really important that our queen has access to the d4 square. And this becomes critical if White does anything to keep us out of h4. So for example, if White were to play a move like g3, and the same would be true for h3, so if you're wondering what if he played h3, it's the same idea. What we're going to do is we're going to take on f2. Now normally this would be a bad exchange. We don't want to exchange two pieces for a rook and a pawn. But remember, we have access to that d4 square. So after rook takes f2, bishop f2, king f2, we would have queen d4 check, forking king and bishop, and Black is simply up an exchange here. He got rook and a pawn for two pieces, and then he picked up a piece after that. That's up an exchange and a pawn. So an exchange and a pawn is a pretty big advantage. So what do we play here after knight to g4? There isn't actually a good move. So the computer recommendation, which I doubt you would see from any human player, would be a move like d4. And then interestingly enough, the computer recommendation for Black is a very typical Stafford Gambit-esque move. It's the move queen d6, simply threatening queen h2 mate. And the only reason that Black does this is to just force a weakening pawn move from White, which he has to make here. So something like g3 would have to get played, and then we simply play bishop takes d4. And this position is somewhere between major advantage to decisive advantage Black, somewhere within that range. Black just has a really great position. But that's what the computer recommends. It wants to play d4 and just kind of chuck that pawn and complete the development. Now, I think most human players would play something like bishop e2, and then unfortunately this is just an absolutely irresistible attack. Queen h4 threatening mate, bishop g4 would be forced, bishop g4, and then queen e1, and then this move, which I discovered when I was in high school, but was also discovered by several other players, I think simultaneously. I think a lot of people found this move, and it's a really cool move to play. It's one of my favorite moves, is the move bishop to f3. So the idea is kind of twofold. Is number one, we have this threat. We have this threat of queen to g4, followed by queen to g2. So bishop f3 is not a move that can just be ignored. But at the same time, it's not a piece that can be captured. If we capture this bishop, we are going to be simply retreating this bishop to d6, and there is no stopping the threat of queen takes h2. These pawns can't be pushed, the dark squares are completely dominated, and we have a log jam over here on the king side where this white king is basically just going to get mated. So we put this bishop on f3, and this bishop simply cannot be captured. And actually, this came up with a game that was this game came up around the same time I was playing this back when I was a kid. This game came up in 1991. It was played between actually quite a strong player, just under 2,500, a player by the name of Velasquez, and he was playing against Toulant, who was not a very strong player. The person playing the black pieces in this position was only was about a 300 rating point difference actually, and he managed to win with black just because black's position is so strong. So that game continued knight e2, and then he just played the simplest possible move, which was just queen takes e4, which is just taking advantage of the fact that he has this pin right here. This knight can't move, it's pinned to the queen, and it forces white's reply. White now has to take this bishop. Queen takes pawn, and then he played d4. Queen g4 check got played, which is actually a super strong move. If the king moves to h1, we're going to continue with rook takes e2, and then after, say, queen d1, we're going to play bishop d6. And not only has black gotten his material back, his attack, and his position, he's just completely winning. You can't even play f3, queen g2 is mate, and of course there's threats against the king all over the place now, and on the dark squares, and on any kind of squares you want. Black's got them all. So, what white did in the game was actually pretty smart. He blocked the mate threat with knight g3, and after rook e1, bishop takes d4, king g2, and then bishop c5, and I'll just go a few moves more here, but basically after these moves, there's nothing here for white at all. Black just has a queen for a rook and a minor piece, and he also has attacking chances, and that's more than enough to win in positions like this. So black went on to win that game in very nice fashion. So if you're a club level player, I really do recommend this bishop to c5 move for this reason, because there's a lot of these really nice possibilities out there to play these aggressive attacking positions with black with very little risk. Now, it's also important to note there was an improvement on the Paulson versus Morphy game right here. It was possible for Paulson to play the fork trick one move sooner. He didn't have to castle and then allow Morphy to castle, where he could play this Stafford Gambit-esque type position with rook e8, where he was actually just playing a really good version of the Stafford Gambit. He could have just played knight takes e5 immediately, which a lot of people consider slight edge white. I think it's close to slight edge white, but I'm going to say that black can completely equalize here if he plays correctly. So what black should do is black should allow the fork trick. Black should play knight takes e5. We're not going to be able to get away with our same Stafford-esque type position. We should just allow the fork trick. It's fine. d4, and then a lot of books incorrectly give the move bishop to b4, and I think this is why they're under the impression that this is slight edge white. It's actually much better to insert the move a6 here and just attack this bishop and just say, okay, what are you going to do in this position? We're just going to go ahead and insert the move a6, and after this bishop retreats, now we're going to go ahead and we are going to retreat our bishop to d6. We're not going to play bishop to b4, and then when they play f4 and try to take over the whole middle, this knight retreats to c6, and now the bishop will go to b4. And after e takes f6, queen f6, we should have complete equality here. Black has a little bit of extra development, a little bit of extra deployment, and white has a little bit better of a center, but really in the end, it's just not a whole lot to write home about. And this was the line that was played in sort of a semi-recent game. It was played in Way versus Ilazhinov in Turkey in 2014. And this game actually ended well for Ilazhinov. And I'll just show the rest of that game real quick. Went bishop d3. He took back his portion of the center. He doubled the pawns. Ended up castling queenside. And you can see black is doing great here. So after just a few more moves, black is actually doing kind of spectacularly well. And he was able to turn this into an advantage, and he was able to turn that advantage into a win. He's got a huge advantage on the light squares right now. He's got really good light squares, and white ended up with a really bad bishop. So he was just able to segue this into a big enough attack on the king side and a big enough advantage that his position was basically irresistible. And he won the game with black. Way resigned in this position back in 2014 in Turkey. So this knight takes e5. It's absolutely no guarantee that this move is advantage white if black plays correctly. Black should be able to equalize again by simply taking this knight and then throwing in that a6 move and then retreating our bishop with bringing that bishop back to d6. There's just absolutely no reason for us to get into trouble in this position. So anyways, that kind of covers my bishop c5, my Morphy move in this position against the bishop b5 main line. And in the next video, I'm going to be exclusively focusing on the main line and what I think my more advanced players should have as maybe their primary weapon. And that weapon is going to be the Rubinstein variation with knight to d4. And tune in and check that next video out. I hope that you found this video helpful. I hope you learned something new about chess, and I hope you can use these ideas to help you in your own games. Thank you very much for watching. Please like, subscribe, and hit that notification icon. Thank you very much.